So yeah, my name's Jan Barnard and I'm the Small Business Support Specialist for AgBiz Assist. I've got my team here together with me today. Brian up the top there, Colin and Warwick. I'd ask you to put yourselves on mute throughout the presentation. Warwick and Brian and Colin are going to watch the chat box for me. So if you've got questions as we're going along, pop them in the chat box if it's relevant for us to answer it at that point, or we'll come back to it at the end. Probably a good idea to turn off your mobile phone and anything else that's going to distract you. And it's only a short presentation. So, we'd encourage you to ask as many questions as you possibly can. Just to let you know that we are recording the session. Guys asked for that so that we can pop it on the website, and we'll see how we go. So any other questions or comments at this stage? I've told you all to go on mute, so you can't really tell me, can you? All right, I'm going to share my screen now and start the presentation. Okay, can you still hear me? Beautiful. All right, thank you. It's just my microphone seems to go in and out. So today's session is all about government assistance for small businesses. And as Guy mentioned, it's being presented by AgBiz Assist. So just a little bit of detail about who AgBiz Assist is. We're a not-for-profit organisation that's funded by Victorian and federal government funding, and we cover small business counselling, rural financial counselling. We have a dedicated dairy program. We are a social enterprise, and we do have a trading arm, Straight Up IT. We have our offices in Wodonga, Benalla, Shepparton and Numurkah, and we cover the northeast of Victoria, as you can see on this map, from Whittlesea right up to Campaspe and right across to Towong. So our small business support team have extensive experience and a wide range of skills to assist the small business, rural and regional businesses in the area to help them understand what the financial position of the business is and the viability. We can also come in and help identify options for business improvement and put an action plan together. Currently, we're working with a number of businesses from bushfire affected areas and also drought as well. So that's our skill set. The service itself is a free, confidential and independent service. To be eligible for the service, you only need to have an ABN and currently operating in the northeast of Victoria or Goulburn Valley. We will meet you wherever you want us to meet you, whether it's at your business place, which is probably not the place to be at the moment. At the moment, we're doing all of our assistance by email, phone. We can do Zoom meetings, as you can see. So there's the opportunity for all of you to make an appointment with us after today if you want further assistance as well. So today's session is all about looking at what government initiatives and support is out there for your business in Indigo at the moment. So the first one is the coronavirus or the COVID-19 Business Support Fund to a maximum of $10,000. You can apply for it if you have staff, if you employ staff and have a turnover of more than $75,000 per annum. So turnover, sales, revenue, and your payroll is less than 650. So this grant is provided, so it's a grant, it's not to be repaid, it comes straight directly to you, and it's to cover the cost of utilities, rent, salaries, and any other activities to support your business continuity. So to put your business in the best possible position it can be currently. So I was talking to a business yesterday about the JobKeeper, and when we were talking about the superannuation payments that still need to be made on the base salary of your employees, this $10,000 grant would help assist with those payments if you're not actually trading currently. The second part of the assistance is the JobKeeper payment. So this is to help businesses keep people in their jobs and make sure that they're ready to go when this crisis is over. So in order to be eligible, they need to have employees, and it's the employer that actually applies for the payment of $1,500 per employee per fortnight. Now, regardless of whether you are paying your employee a lesser amount, you still need to pay them the $750 that you receive from the government under the JobKeeper payment. To be eligible, you have to have a turnover of less than $1 billion. Pretty sure most of our regional businesses that we're talking to at the moment have that. The turnover has to have already fallen 30% or likely to fall 30%. Now, one of the things that we're talking about with a lot of the businesses that we're working in this area with is don't self-assess yourself. So if your turnover hasn't fallen by 30%, it might be 25 or 20, still submit your application and let them make the decision. If you haven't been trading for a year, then you just need to prove that there's been a significant impact on your business. Well, clearly, if you're not actually trading at the moment, that's a significant impact. The payment is for full-time, part-time and casual staff, but then the casual staff obviously have to have been with the business for over a year, and also non-paid parental leave. Self-employed are also eligible for the JobKeeper payment, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So it's up to the employer to apply for the JobKeeper payment, and they need to identify the eligible employees within their business for those payments. There will be reporting requirements, which will be monthly updates to the ATO, and the employer must elect all of the eligible employees into the scheme. It's up to the employer if they want to pay superannuation on the additional wage paid. So, for example, you're getting $750 a week. Now, your employee may, I was talking a business yesterday, their employee's only receiving about $250 and they're paying some super off that. You only have to pay the super on that $250. Again, if you're unsure, check with the ATO. Give them a call or give the hotline a call as well. If you're self-employed, you can register your interest. You must have an ABN and you need to nominate yourself or the owner with the tax file number as to where the payment's going to go. And obviously provide a declaration as to the recent business activity so that to ensure that there has been a downturn. So self-employed are also eligible, but it is at the discretion of the tax commissioner. So you'll need to register and then have a discussion with them after you've put your application in the event that it's not approved. Other relief measures that came out earlier in the year for bushfire impacted businesses was you get extra time to pay your BAS, your December BAS. Indigo unfortunately didn't fall under the eligible postcodes, but you can give them a call and they will give you
Just lost you, Jen. Just lost you. You're on mute, I think. I can hear something.
Jan, you're offline. Wait.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep, can't hear you, Jan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. So Jan can't hear us, obviously, and we can't hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No?
Yep.
Yep, I can hear you, Jen. Jen.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, let's go back.
Yep.
Yep, all good?
I think it was about the first slide.
Oh,
No, it's all right. It's all right.
well, we'll go back to the first slide and you can pick it up from there, Warwick. You can ring the tax department if you're struggling to pay any tax payments that you are in order in your BAS or your income tax. Set up a payment plan. One of the things that we talk about with a lot of businesses is to give the ATO a call. They're very helpful, and the emergency support hotline or info line in particular has been set up for bushfire impacted businesses, which the businesses in Indigo would be covered under that. There are some tax relief measures in place. And again, what I would say to you is to give the emergency information line a call to see if you are eligible for any of those. At the moment, there's a regional payroll tax relief of paying only 25% of the metropolitan rate. And obviously this deferred December BAS, but you will need to apply for this. One of the things that's genuinely overlooked in times of difficulty is the role of the Small Business Commissioner. And this is a Victorian initiative that's been around for quite some time now. And in particular, the Small Business Commissioner will help in any mediation that needs to be done with, for example, your landlord, or in terms of your suppliers for payments, or your bank if you have banking issues around loan repayments and you're not getting the support that you need. I would encourage you to ring the Small Business Commissioner, and they will help arrange the mediation around that. They have a fairly good percentage of successful outcomes. So again, the number's there, or the email address is there as well. The other thing that was introduced as a result of the bushfires was the small business concessional loans. Now, these loans are up to $500,000, and it's available where there's been significant damage to assets or a significant loss of income. So obviously for Indigo, there wasn't a fire through Indigo, so this loan would be available for you if you need to cover some of your ongoing expenses. So that, in terms of what we talk about, that's called meeting the working capital expenses. Excuse me. The concessional loans are set up with no repayments for the first 2 years, and it's an interest-free period. And then after the first 2 years, principal and interest repayments are required. So some of the businesses that we've been talking to about these concessional loans, we've said, okay, if you're successful in the loan and we can get back to normal trading within a 2-year period and pay back that loan, then you're getting free money for that two-year period. Of course, you need to understand that it is a loan, it needs to be repaid, and it is debt. Currently, the interest that will be applicable after the second year is at 0.82%. Excuse me. But this is subject to an annual review. So in 2 years' time, it may have gone up or not down. Excuse me, I just need to take a drink. Warwick, can you take over for a minute?
Are you trying to compete with your dog, eh?
I just need to get a glass of water, please.
That's okay. So the concessional loans, one thing to remember, I think, there is that there's the eligibility criteria, but there's also some costs associated with that in terms of the application. Well, I'm not sure if there's an application fee, but there's costs associated with providing security and documentation. So even though it's interest free, there's still a few expenses there to incur to get that established. But obviously it's still a good product. Yeah, you can see the key points there: hold an ABN, small business in an area. Now, there's some people have asked the question about these concessional loans about what do they deem to be working capital? Like, obviously working capital is to bridge the gap as your normal overdraft facility would do, and or other, provide other revenue to support that income, or to support those expenses. But there's also been discussion about doing some minor improvements to a business, or doing something that would not necessarily meet strict working capital definitions, but there would be some capacity there to improve the business so that when we get to the other side of this, the business can then generate a better revenue stream. So there's been discussion about little things like someone looked at doing a small subdivision of a parcel of land off their property, and whether they'd be eligible to fit within the scheme to provide the concessional loans to support that. And apparently it is. There's been other things, examples whereby, say, make soil needs to improve some, needs to do some couple of works on its sprinkle to improve our facility, so when we get through this, they've got a better asset base to generate better revenue. So those things are still in the grey zone, but they seem to be accepted by rural finance, and they'll be approved. So I think you have to be careful not to be too confined by that definition of working capital. It's about how we can just trade through until revenue streams come back to some level of normality. I don't know, is there anything else in that slide we need to discuss, Jan?
No, I think we're all good. We're all good. Oh, do you want me to take over again, or you're doing such a good job?
I think it's the key thing here is this concessional loan is good, but it is processed through rural finance. So they will adopt the same basic practices of a banker. So all the criteria of your normal banking arrangements needs to be provided. So like this thing see here, all your past 3 financial statements, all the details of your business, assets and liabilities, and cash flow forecasts, and that's a difficult one at the moment. But I think people just have to be realistic about putting in figures as they are and assume a worst case scenario.
And that's something that we can help you with in terms of putting together if required. I think,
what else do we need?
I think, and the other thing is that you will be required to provide some security.
Just on that though, obviously the key point, like the key issue there that people would have concern about is revenue's dried up, we're applying for a loan, and we have to demonstrate some level of sustainability and viability to have the capacity to repay that debt. And if I do a cash flow today, is that really going to show that I can meet this debt? So I think you just have to sail on the conservative side, but also reflect that, assume that hopefully in 6 months' time, that revenue streams might be back to a level, or starting to get back to a level that can generate enough income to demonstrate your capacity to service that debt. Very much interest free, but ongoing capacity to service that debt and to repay the capital.
That's correct. Okay, thanks. So we also have a couple of other government initiatives that have been around for a little bit that we thought that we would cover off just in case we've got anyone that's being impacted by the drought as well. So the Regional Investment Corporation have a drought loan that's available for up to $500,000 for small businesses that are servicing the agricultural sector. The first 2 years are interest-free and no repayments. The following 3 years are interest only. So that differs from the concessional loans. And then the next 5 years, principal and interest repayments. The current interest rate's at 2.11%, and the 10-year term is after the 5 years, the way that they calculate it out is that it goes over a 10-year period, and so after the next 5 years, there still will be a repayment that needs to be made, and you're expected to refinance that as well. So there are some hooks in this one in particular, but again, it is available to businesses that provide services to primary production in the most drought-affected communities. And Colin, our esteemed team member over there, is managing our drought-affected communities at the moment. So if we have anyone that's interested in looking at some of the drought loans or needs assistance in that area, Colin's going to be our specialist. The loan can be provided to help with your working capital to get you through the drought. So again, we've got the link down the bottom there for you. And the last one's a farm household allowance. So Brian, do you want to just talk to that one? Because you haven't said anything, and I hate for you to not unmute. Yep.
Farm household allowance is certainly available for people in Indigo Shire, but the primary reason for the application is around farming enterprise. A substantial part of the income, in other words, more than 51% of your exertion and 51% of your income has to be derived from primary production. Now that may knock out some, and some people that do have farms have off-farm businesses, so they are certainly potentially eligible. The payment is fortnightly for up to 4 years, whereas the other types of grants for the JobKeeper and so on are only for 6 months. The question sometimes get asked is, should I put the farm household allowance on hold and do the JobKeeper for 6 months and then go back on the farm household allowance? I think as a technical question, you might want to put that up the flagpole with Centrelink before you apply, or talk to your accountant, because there could be ramifications either way that may or may have unintended consequences for your operation. Sometimes swapping between the two can be an advantage, but there's also downside risk that you may end up having to pay back to Centrelink. But going back to the farm household allowance, as a detailed application, it's equivalent of about $14,700 or $15,000 a year per applicant. Husbands and wives can both apply, so you double it. It's also for people that are share farming and deriving significant income from farming enterprise. Give us a call. The number's down the bottom. We can talk you through the process of the application. It's online. It's fairly straightforward. The best use of our time is to answer the questions you don't know, because a lot of the questions are very straightforward. Things like, your name and address, I'm sure you know that, your ABN number, that sort of stuff. But when it gets down to the technical things about, whether part of the land is in or out of the calculation for allowances, then we can come and certainly give you some guidance on that. So I think with the farm household allowance, it's certainly there for farming families that derive significant amounts of their time and labour into farming and therefore income. Happy to work with you on that.
Thanks, Brian. Can you hear me? Yep, beautiful. Okay, so that's a summary of what we have out there in terms of government support currently. One of the things that we'd really like you to think about is that if you want to have a look at any of that support, please give us a call if you need a hand. The number's here again on the slide here. As I said, it's a free, confidential, independent service. We usually come and meet you. Unfortunately, currently we can't do that, but we will do over the phone, email, or we can do these Zoom or Skype assisted support if required. And as I said, you've met the team today, so that's probably all I've got to do. So I'll unshare my screen now, and let's see, have we got any? We've got some questions Guys, you can unmute yourselves now.
I had one regarding the small business concessional loan. Are you able to make repayments within that first 2-year period? And are there any rules around the levels of repayments within that period?
You can make repayments during that period. I don't believe there's any rules around the level of those. That would be something that we'd need to check on, and we can come back to you on that, John. But yes, you definitely, there is the facility for you to be able to repay that whole loan within that two-year period.
Yep. And is there a minimum amount for that scheme? Minimum amount to borrow?
Not that I'm aware of. Warwick, have you?
No, not that I'm aware of, John. I've had one client who looked at borrowing around $50,000, but didn't really want to offer up their property as landed security. And we put forward the option of having, directors' guarantees of the company and providing joint and severals and assets and liabilities. And they came back to us and said they wouldn't necessarily agree in writing to that, but they'd definitely review the application on that basis. Because they too only wanted to have 50 grand to get them through and get it back within 2 years and didn't want to have a longer term debt. So there's definitely opportunity there to put an application for a smaller amount or whatever amount it is and repay it quickly.
And just one, so if say, Warwick, you borrowed the 50,000, do you then need to show receipts for what the 50 was used for, or once you're granted the loan, it's yours to use at your discretion?
Well, my understanding is you have to just confirm that what you need the money for, and most of the time it's capacity to trade through. So your cash flow would demonstrate that you've got a shortfall you need to fund.
Yep.
So rather than being the past, more towards current and future.
Yes.
And the impact that's had on your business income streams.
Yep.
So I'm currently talking with a business that's it's an olive farm, and they lost their income obviously over the January period that actually funds their harvest coming up, and so they're applying for a small loan under $50,000, and to justify that they've got their receipts from last year's harvest. So there's contractors and there's different service providers. So that's all we've put in is just those invoices from last year. So this is what it cost last year. This is the amount that we need to cover that harvest. And then obviously, they can service the loan through that. So that we've gone backwards instead of forwards in terms of justifying it. Yep.
So just obviously I'm looking for, I represent some clients in Indigo. So the example I'm thinking of is a car loan for a small van they use for their business. Say $40,000 to pay the car loan out, which then frees up obviously cash flow. Is that the sort of thing they're looking at, or does it need to be a more exact plan than that?
John,
I've got a couple of businesses that are actually looking at taking the concessional loan to refinance, and we've spoken with them directly, and they've said, "Yep, that's okay. You can do that."
Thank you.
Brian, were you going to add something?
There's a great level of detail there in the guidelines. There is eligible debt and ineligible debt, and you need to probably analyse those two components against what your proposition is and see whether it fits the guidelines. If it doesn't fit the guidelines, it doesn't say you can't do it. You just have to think about the justification for the loan. So it might be what you're wanting to do is refinance a particular product that's ineligible, but you might find there's another area that you could actually use the finance for that is eligible, which frees up your cash flow to service the ineligible debt.
Yeah.
Combination of things that you've got to look at. It's not just a straight yes and no answer. There's a bit of nuancing and a bit of detail that you need to work through and think through carefully in the way you approach it, because the amount of paperwork for a $40,000 loan is exactly the same as a $500,000 loan.
Yep. And that there's a fact sheet if I go to the website.
There's a fairly detailed set of guidelines that runs to about 14 pages. I know that can be daunting, but
The bushfire one?
No, this is
The concessional loan eligibility criteria guidelines.
So that's the RIC loan, not the bushfire one.
this
Yeah.
$500,000 loan, Rick, and the one through rural finance, pretty much the same. They're quite detailed. It's like going for a loan at the bank. The amount of stuff you've got to put up for it is quite detailed. It's specific, and you need to go carefully and make sure that every box is answered. It doesn't matter whether and I got one knocked back recently where we left the middle name out in the contact list, and they sent it back for reassessment. So you just got to make sure the detail is exactly spot on, consistent all the way through, because it's got to get through QA first of all, quality assurance. And if it doesn't meet the criteria, that they send it back to you for resubmit.
And I also think you need to be conscious of the fact you need to demonstrate viability. Even though the revenue stream's been hammered, they'll be looking at capacity to repay. And I've had one where the capacity to repay was very marginal, and they're not ones to step over the line and support someone who's a bit marginal, believe it or not. I know the whole basis for this assistance is to support people in this difficult period, but if you can't demonstrate some concrete evidence of sustainability and good cash flow in the future, they'll put a question mark against it and might decline it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
John, I'll circulate contacts and links after this as well, so all the information shared, all right?
Thanks, Guy.
Any other questions? I'm just looking at the chat. Looks like Brian has answered a question for Papa. Any other questions?
No, I think that's all right at the moment.
All right, cool. All right. So as I mentioned to you, we've recorded this session. So Guy will be able to put it up on the website with that bit in the middle where I was having a coughing fit. That was really quite professional, but you know, what can you do? As we've mentioned also that if you want a hand with any of these loans or grants or whatever, please ring the 1300 number, register you need for assistance, or if it's for the drought loan, it's all the same number. It goes on to a referral form, and then we pass it to the relevant small business support person for each case that comes through. And we're happy to assist you in any way that you need us to be assisted. And if there's anything further that you would like in terms of presentations, I know Guy's quite keen for us to hopefully do some more presentations if we get the tick of approval from today. And so if you've got any ideas that you want, please let him know. And that's probably all from us for today. So thank you very much.
I'll just say one thing, Jan. We're more than happy if this is if people can spread this by word of mouth and get people to think about applying or making inquiry. Happy to take any inquiry, whatever that may be, so that people don't self-assess or think that they're not eligible for anything, because there's too many people out there at the moment who aren't being proactive in this sector. And we realise that, you know, at the moment people have got a lot of things on their plate, but if we can just spread it by word of mouth to get people to think about it and make a phone call, and then we can talk through different issues and help many people as we can.
Yep.
I was just going to share one thing, my experience with the ATO around the deferring BAS payments. While Indigo Shire wasn't directly on the list of allowable shires, as soon as I mentioned that the client was in Indigo, a neighbouring shire, where there'd normally be a dozen questions, there were no more questions, and the extension was granted straight away. Certainly, if you are talking to people, it's a very quick phone call.
Yeah, once they put those postcodes out, we did quite a bit of advocacy around that as well. We couldn't actually get them to change it, but we did find that once we notified them that, you know, they'd missed, you know, Indigo and Maresfield and a couple of others. You know, half of Wangaratta was missed. Yeah, our experience with our own clients was the same. Just ring them and they just went, yep, no problem.
Yeah.
So
The hardest thing is getting people to pick up the phone to call the
Yep.
tax office.